Two cops thought they had stumbled upon yet another suspicious individual to liven up their otherwise dull evening. They cracked jokes, twisted his arms, and rummaged through his belongings until they opened a briefcase. What they found inside obliterated their careers in a matter of moments. But let's rewind and start from the very beginning. The patrol car coasted smoothly through the quiet, dimly lit streets, its flashing lights casting an occasional glow on the empty sidewalks. Officers Tom Carter and Bob Randall, both in their 40s and utterly bored, were passing the time with small talk, recounting their uneventful day. They had spent most of it handing out parking tickets, scolding jaywalkers, and pulling over anyone who looked even remotely suspicious. "Hey, check this out," Tom said, his voice breaking the monotony as he nodded toward a sleek, black sedan parked outside a small store. A tall black man, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, was calmly loading bags into the open trunk. A little overdressed for a late-night grocery run, don't you think? Dealer, maybe? Or he's hiding something else, he added with a smirk. Bob grinned and leaned back in his seat. "Looks like someone's volunteered for a traffic stop," he said, eager to spice up the night. "Let's see what he's up to." As they pulled up alongside the sedan, the man glanced at them, but there was no hint of concern in his eyes. He closed the trunk, straightened his jacket, and stood there composed, waiting for them to approach. "Evening, sir," Tom said casually, his voice authoritative yet relaxed. "Just a routine check. Mind showing us your ID?" The man raised an eyebrow and responded with a calm, commanding voice. "Routine? What's the reason for the stop?" Bob stepped forward with a smirk, the tension in the air palpable. "Because we said so," he replied with a sneer. "You people always have something going on. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The man's expression remained unchanged, but his voice dropped an octave, his calmness unwavering. "I hope you're aware that racial profiling is illegal," he said coolly. "I suggest you reconsider this approach." Tom's patience was wearing thin. "We'll reconsider," he snapped, grabbing the man's arm roughly. "If you're clean, you've got nothing to worry about." He shoved the man's hands onto the hood of the car, twisting his arms behind his back to snap the handcuffs on. Bob chuckled, rifling through the man's pockets. "You've got quite an attitude for someone in cuffs," he said, amusement in his voice. Tom popped open the trunk, his curiosity piqued. Inside was a large black briefcase. "Well, well," he muttered, opening it with a dramatic flourish. "What do we have here? Cash? Something illegal? Let's see." The briefcase revealed neat stacks of documents, all stamped with the Department of Internal Affairs seal. Among them were photos, reports, and even a dossier with their own names on it. Bob's smile faltered as he scanned the papers. "What is this?" Tom muttered, flipping through the pages. "This can't be real." The man, who had remained calmly seated on the curb, finally allowed himself a small, knowing smile. "You should have listened," he said, his tone almost pitying. "Now it's too late." A loud beep emitted from the briefcase, causing both officers to flinch. "What's that noise?" Bob asked, his voice shaky. "It's an alarm," the man replied coolly. "Backup is on the way. I suggest you get comfortable." The sound of approaching sirens grew louder, and with it, the officers' confidence began to drain. For the first time that night, they realized they were no longer in control. As the briefcase clicked open, Tom and Bob leaned in, expecting to find something they could twist into an arrest-worthy discovery. Instead, their eyes landed on more neatly stacked folders, each bearing the Internal Affairs seal. The weight of the situation didn't hit them immediately, until Bob spotted the first sheet of paper. "Hold up," he muttered, squinting at the bold letters stamped across the top. Official termination notice. Below it were their names, badge numbers, and a list of allegations. Tom grabbed another document, his face draining of color. "Are you seeing this?" he stammered. "It says we're being fired. Fired for systemic discrimination and misconduct. This has to be a joke, right?" Bob, who had already started rifling through the rest of the papers, froze. Each page was more damning than the last, detailed accounts of their questionable stops, civilian complaints, and even screenshots of their internal communications. The air in the parking lot grew thicker with every passing second. "What the?" Bob began, but his voice trailed off as his hand froze on a tablet nestled inside the briefcase. The screen flickered to life, and to their horror, a video began to play. It was them. Their voices, their movements, everything recorded from the moment they had pulled over the man. Tom's voice, sharp and cutting, echoed from the video. "Guys like you always have something to hide." For a moment, neither officer spoke, the weight of what they were seeing sinking in too quickly to process. This has to be staged, Tom muttered, flipping through the folders in desperation. Someone's messing with us. Bob slammed the briefcase shut, his voice rising in anger. Hey, he shouted, storming toward the man sitting calmly on the curb. Who are you? What is this? You're trying to set us up, aren't you? The man didn't flinch. Instead, he looked up at Bob with the same piercing, calm gaze that had unsettled them earlier. A faint smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. Gentlemen, he said, his voice calm and almost amused, you've done this to yourselves. For months now, you've been under investigation. Every stop, every unnecessary escalation, it's all been documented. And tonight, you sealed the deal. What investigation? Tom barked, his voice shaky. You don't even have authority to. I do, the man interrupted, his tone firm. I'm Charles Hartman, Chief of Internal Affairs. And what you just opened wasn't a briefcase. It was Pandora's box. For a beat, the world seemed to stop. Tom and Bob exchanged panicked glances, trying to process what they had just heard. You're lying. Bob blurted out, his voice desperate. This can't be real. Oh, it's real, Hartman replied smoothly. And now that you've triggered the alarm, reinforcements are on their way. You have about 3 minutes to think of your next move. Alarm? Tom whispered, barely able to speak. As if on cue, the briefcase emitted a piercing beep, loud enough to echo across the parking lot. What the heck is that? Bob demanded, his eyes darting toward the source of the sound. Hartman gestured toward the case with his cuffed hands. A little precaution, he said. It's a tracking signal. Every move you've made tonight has been logged. And now, the cavalry is coming to pick up where I left off. The sound of approaching sirens grew louder, cutting through the night air. The officer's bravado had evaporated. Tom's face twisted in disbelief. You're a cop. Not just a cop, Hartman replied, leaning back slightly, his confidence unshaken. The one who's been cleaning up messes like yours for years. The sirens grew closer, and Tom and Bob exchanged frantic glances, their confidence replaced by raw fear. This is some kind of prank, Bob muttered, though even he didn't sound convinced anymore. But as the flashing lights of an unmarked car pulled into the lot, it became painfully clear that this was no prank. Hartman's reinforcements had arrived, and Tom and Bob were out of time. Flashing red and blue lights lit up the parking lot as the unmarked car screeched to a halt. Out stepped Captain Lewis, a man whose commanding presence could silence an entire room. He took a sweeping glance at the scene, the disheveled officers, the calm man in handcuffs, and let out a long, audible sigh. Everyone freeze, Lewis barked, his voice slicing through the tension like a knife. He marched straight to the curb, locking eyes with the restrained man. Release Mr. Hartman. Now. Mr. Who? Tom muttered, fumbling with the cuffs as his hands shook. Charles Hartman, Lewis said, his tone deliberate and heavy with weight, as if daring them to argue. Chief of Internal Affairs. The man who just exposed both of you for what you are. Tom's face went pale. Bob, usually quick with a retort, was too stunned to speak. Captain, there's been some kind of mistake, Tom stammered, stepping back. We didn't know. And that's exactly the problem, Lewis cut him off sharply. You didn't know because you didn't bother to ask. You didn't see a man. You saw an excuse to flex your authority. Your actions are a disgrace to this department. Tom and Bob exchanged a panicked glance. Their bravado was completely gone. But, sir, Bob tried to interject. Lewis raised a hand, silencing him. Save it. Everything you said, every action you took, it's all on video. And guess where it is now? In the department's archive. Don't even think about denying it. The weight of those words hit like a sledgehammer. Both officers stood frozen, their minds scrambling for a way out. But there was no escape. Hartman, now free of the cuffs, calmly stood and adjusted his jacket. Thank you, Captain, he said, his voice as steady as ever. He turned to Tom and Bob, his expression unreadable. Gentlemen, consider this your final lesson in accountability. No one is above the law. The humiliation was palpable. Tom and Bob stood there, stripped of the authority they had wielded so carelessly. Days later, the fallout was swift and brutal. The footage from Hartman's hidden camera was uploaded to the department's archive, where it quickly leaked to the public. Within hours, it went viral. Millions of people watched as Tom and Bob were exposed on tape, their biases and abuses of power laid bare for the world to see. Social media erupted with a mix of outrage and praise for Hartman's unshakable composure. Memes of the officers' stunned faces flooded the internet, turning them into the latest example of why systemic change was long overdue. "See this guy," one popular post read, showing a clip of Hartman's calm demeanor as the officers unraveled. "That's how you handle injustice, with grace and receipts." By the end of the week, Tom and Bob had lost their badges, their jobs, and any shred of credibility they once had. Internal Affairs issued a formal statement condemning their actions, and legal proceedings were already underway. As for Hartman, he became an icon almost overnight. News outlets hailed him as a symbol of accountability and justice. His quiet but resolute approach reminded everyone that true authority comes from integrity, not a badge. In the end, Hartman's actions sent a powerful message. The law applies to everyone, no exceptions. And for Tom and Bob, that message couldn't have been clearer. How would you have handled this situation if you were in Mr. Hartman's shoes? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you or someone you know ever experienced anything similar? Let us know your stories. And don't forget to like and share this video if it resonated with you. This story was created to shine a light on important issues and inspire positive change. Together, we can make the world a better place. Remember, ***, your opinion matters, ***.